Before we get into the nitty gritty, I'm curious how you think about the volatility surrounding the price action and the calls that it's going to go to 400,000 and then calls that, well, maybe actually Bitcoin's only worth 8,000. How does all of that volatility impact you?
Yeah, it doesn't really. I've learned about Bitcoin in 2011, so I've been used to this volatility, and we kind of prepare for it and brace ourselves within the crypto space for that volatility, and we're just focused on building.
Speaking of building, Tegan, how do you think about this in terms of all the companies out there that had these really tremendous hiring plans like Coinbase and now saying that they may rescind some offers? How does that impact the inclination of certain people who maybe were not in crypto before but were thinking about crypto and now might be more spooked by some of these knee-jerk reactions ahead?
No, I think that that's a fair response, but I do notice that there are still many projects hiring within the space. Coinbase is a multi-thousand person company, and so with volumes down, exchanges are impacted. And so it sounds like they just want to hunker down for a bit, but there are many projects that are building within the space. And one thing that's really interesting about the crypto ecosystem is that you don't need companies that are thousands of people wide unless it's a bridge to the space like Coinbase. You can have companies that are much smaller, so a few dozen to a few hundred, and then it's less impactful when there are times like this. So I wouldn't lose steam. I think that it's still quite optimistic within the space and just with the potential that crypto and Web3 have.
Well, what are the kinds of companies you think will be able to hire most, Tegan? Where can a person who wants to get a lot of crypto skill gain that crypto expertise in a crypto winter?
Yeah, I mean, we're still hiring Edge and Node, and we work on the Graph protocol. Many core developers within the Graph ecosystem are also hiring. And I think there are many protocols, like look at Arweave, look at Connext. We still need talent. And it's actually in a market like this, it's easier to get talent. The price tags for talent were really rising up during the bull market. And so it is a good opportunity for projects and companies to be very decisive about who they want to hire and the roles that they really need to hire for in a time of uncertainty within the broader macro environment. Yeah, many projects are still hiring.
How do you think about the inherent conflict of decentralization on companies that are getting bigger and bigger who might need authority and centralization over a product?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think in Web3, you really want to give that power away. You want to give that power back to the user, and that's really what this is about. But that doesn't mean that centralized companies won't go away. They'll just exist in the concept of decentralization. And the Graph protocol is a great example of this. There are over 5 companies, one of which is Edge and Node, that exist within the context of that protocol. And now that we have these new monetization structures, we're able to get rid of the kind of wonky monetization models like ads and kind of making users the product, like what we see a lot in Web2 within the Web3 space. And so that's exciting.
The Graph has been referred to as the Google of blockchains, and you've announced a Web3 browser. So how is that kind of browser going to be different than Google itself?
Yeah, so great question. So Geo is the browser that was announced yesterday, and it is a decentralized browser. It's the first browser of Web3, so very different than any browser that we're used to in the Web2 space. And Web3 is really a new web. It's a verifiable web. And so you can think of like a Google Docs form where you can see all the change history. That's how Geo works. And so anyone can contribute to changes. However, there's reputation within Geo. And so the more you vote, and you can earn more reputation over time, and you have more say. So it's really about giving the power, the control, the ownership, the decision-making all back to the user. And everyone's been asking, where's Web3? I can't find it. Well, now with Geo, you can.
So what about the Web2 companies that are getting more into Web3 and starting to dip their toe into blockchain in a bigger way? Do you think that the traditional Web2 companies, Meta, Google even, do you think that they can create a lot of competition in this space?
I don't. I think that Google's doing very well selling ads. I think that they are doing a great job in that current space. I think as a founder, once you take equity or once you start monetizing in one way, it's really difficult to reshape that monetization. You have a lot of stakeholders. And so I think they would need to kind of like spin out, or enable this space in some way. And even with banks, right? Like banks aren't going away. You still want someone to call you when if you have a margin trade out and you're about to get liquidated. And so there's still a lot of room for the traditional companies to exist within the space. It'll just be in a different context.
You know, we talked about crypto winter in the vein of hiring, but what about crypto winter in terms of the types of projects that will be built? Do you think this is the opportunity for crypto to pivot? Are there going to be different types of projects than we saw in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, so all the pieces of the tech stack are there. We're still building, and I'm actually really excited about this cool off because so many founders and projects were being pulled in 90 different directions in the bull market. And now you see the projects that are really being used. And it kind of comes back to fundamentals as opposed to the marketing that went in during that bull market. And so you're pulled in less directions and you're able to just build. And I think the biggest piece to the puzzle is really time. And now with this market, we have that time.